purposes of this hearing. There have been a lot of claims that were made by the victim here, and it's not often, or can I even recall an instance where defense counsel at sentencing had to address the credibility of the victim's allegations at sentencing. But this appears to be that time. I will simply say this: some of these claims that were made about sending photos of genitals, we went through these claims with the prosecutor's office for a long time, approximately 18 months. No such image was presented, either to the state or to the defense. The claim that he is a pedophile lacks any sort of factual support from the case, and it also lacks any sort of mental health claim. It's an easy tag to give someone, but doesn't fit in this case. Clearly, the victim in this case, and again, it's difficult because it's hard for me to walk the very fine line in this case between what he did and what he's being accused of doing, that which he accepted responsibility for and that which he would never accept responsibility for.
I'm going to ask you, what is he accepting responsibility for?
So the acceptance of the responsibility, Your Honor, is for chats that occurred between he and the victim.
What was the subject matter of those chats?
The subject matter of those chats were there's a lot to it. So there was discussion because they had known each other for years, and there were claims that became sexual in nature. When asked, however, at what point, or at your age, excuse me, at that point he said, "Can you hurry up?" which shows a complete intent not to engage with a minor. So, however, those chats, harmful as they were, clearly harmed this person at that time.
They were sexual in nature.
Those were, yes. Thank you. They certainly, however, Your Honor, did not mimic any of the factual scenarios that the victim has brought up here today. And again, I have to emphasize the fact that once the age was known, that terminated at that point, saying hurry up with the age. But I will say this.
Let me ask you this.
Yes,
You're
please.
saying he didn't know how old she was when he first started engaging in conversations with her, either at a concert or by telephone. He didn't know that her age.
At the start, he may not have known. He did learn of the age at a later time, Your Honor, and that is why he's accepting the plea. What's it? Yeah, during the chats, Your Honor. Kevin, you have the dates on the chats? The chats, correct? You would agree? Yeah. So the state and defense would agree the age was mentioned during those chats, Your Honor. All right. So, Your Honor, other than, this offense for which he's pled guilty, this court is aware that there were two OVIs, but nothing ever similar to anything like this. We would ask for basic community controlled sanction, which would then be transferred to California. That certainly would be sufficient pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 29, 29, 11, 12, 13, and 14, because in this case, recidivism does not appear likely, and nor does the severity of it outweigh any similar offenses by similar offenders when we're looking at what was actually pled to in this case. The claim that seeing the therapist resulted from this, and again, this is where I'm just going to take this responsibility for making the record straight. I'm sure it's not going to be, the victim in this case is not going to like what I have to say, but we are aware that that therapy did not begin with Drake. This began before. Throughout this case, and this is why I think that the plea is very accurate and very fitting, and all parties agreed to this, including the victim in this case, was aware of this before this day and approved of this plea. Clearly, she, according to a lot of the statements that were provided in this case, worshipped and kind of held herself out as a super fan of Mr. Bell. There were no claims at all of any sort of inappropriate conduct until the victim in this case learned of Mr. Bell's fiance, now wife. And at that point, that's when everything kind of turned the world upside down. in going through all of these statements and all the witnesses in this case, I will just simply, I'm trying to do this in as gentle a manner as possible, but there was certainly concern for the victim's reality in her case and in her claims thereafter. The claims as to Janet Bell and the exchange online that was happening, we had provided a video to the prosecutor's office from Miss Bell. She explained why she spoke to the victim the way that she did. She explained that she was just trying to appease her and trying to let her believe that she was just being heard because she had difficulty even talking to her about it. So this was not anything that, as the victim somehow believes now, was genuine by Miss Bell. This was an attempt just simply to diffuse the situation, which in hindsight, they clearly judged correctly as a dangerous situation. I'm not sitting here today, Judge, to minimize the conduct of what Drake did. But what was accused here today, what was brought out here today, was a far other world from what we, the state and the defense, had contemplated prior to. Since the time of her allegation, when she claims that this happened, she went to 9 additional concerts that he was at. She would message him saying, "I miss you." When we talk about the kind of different reality, I think one of the points that stood out most to me was in the victim's videoed statement to the detective in this case from the Cleveland Police Department, Atanasio, when he asked her, "Has anyone come to speak to you on behalf of the defense?" And she said, "Yes." And the detective said, "Who was that?" "Well, they're the private investigator for Mr. Bell." And we were, the prosecution, defense, were all in the same room. We heard that. And we knew perfectly well that that had never happened. And then all of a sudden she stated that, "Oh, you know what? Actually, I was wrong. I was confused. It didn't happen. It was just seemed really realistic to me." And that showed great concern for credibility and recollection. She talks about the hotel room at the Aloft, and I understand that she has problems with her aunt now, but it is important to show that there was another adult who was there. All of this was shared with the state and the defense. This is why we pled the way that we did to what was actually done, not what is actually being stated here today. And that friend was very clear, not just in a statement to the defense, but also in another recorded statement to the Cleveland Police Detective Atanasio. And that person stated that the victim had never gone into Mr. Bell's room alone, period. And that was twice stated to us and to the detective. She talks about performing oral sex here today on 2 occasions, stating that there was never, that this happened in the back room at the Odeon. We also were able to identify and share witnesses who indicated they had gone back and forth down the hall into that room throughout the night. The door was open. There were people in that room at all night, at all times, and this did not happen. She did tell one of her friends, and I'll get to some here in a moment, that she did report this when she did because she did not, or she stated that Mr. Bell did not respond to her liking. So in essence, what this is was a person who, and that's okay, idolized this person. His conduct was not correct. It was not proper for what he did. And unfortunately, he did not know who he was speaking with and the damage that this was going to do. But I have to be very clear because it would not be fair to sit there and just accept everything that was said. What occurred, or what the victim is claiming to have occurred here, not only am I saying that it did not happen, not only would Mr. Bell say that that did not happen, but the evidence in the state, the evidence in this case would suggest it did not happen. And again, we all know that this prosecutor's office would pursue child sex charges and go to great lengths and aggressively, as they should, and we've seen it many times. If they felt that that was a provable case, I'm sure we would not be talking here today about an attempted child endangerment and a disseminating matter harmful to a minor. Now, as far as sanction, Your Honor, in asking for the basic community control sanction, I would submit that there's already a great penalty that has been paid by Mr. Bell that others would not face merely because of his position. As As the court knows, online, if you just simply type in his name, the initial Google result will come up with 23.6 million results that deal with Drake Bell and this very process for which we're standing here today. So this is something that's going to tag him and follow him around. He's already seen a loss of employment because of this, because people have wondered, what is this all about? My hope is that that will start up for him again when now they know what the reality of this actually is. You know, again, to go back to the just flippant claim that he's a pedophile, as the court is aware, we did engage professionals in this, and there is no such finding as was suggested here today. So, Your Honor, I would submit that the basic communicable sanction with the Interstate Compact of California is adequate. Lack of history justifies what we are requesting. The nature of the plea, the level of the offenses certainly supports that request as well. And if it would please the court, I would ask that Mr. Bell make a brief statement on his own behalf. And I would also let the court know that I've asked Mr. Bell to keep it brief because in my professional judgment, I cannot state that civil litigation will not follow this. And I feel that I would not be doing a service to my client if I didn't suggest that. Now, yes, of course, there was a plea that can be used, but we're still talking about two very different things here today. So I thank the court for consideration.